And now the survival show that once survived walking to another room and then trying to remember why I was there. In this episode, your buddy, Josh, drops by. You will remember him from the drunk episode. Today, we discuss becoming the medic of your prepper household and other medical shenanigans. Howdy and welcome to the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 276. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Josh, welcome back to the rabbit hole, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
Like, you're always around. The audience doesn't know that, but you're always, well, not like here, but
I'm always here. I mean, you have me on, but I'm also a big fan of the show, so I enjoy watching it. I've actually really enjoyed this season. It's been really good.
Thanks. We've been sitting here talking for like 2 hours, and I forgot to ask you why. What's different about this season? We'll have to get that after we record, but I appreciate that. But I wanted to congratulate you because you have done like a really hard hump of going through your EMT stuff and paramedic stuff and all that other, and you're like right there at the edge of the finish line. Like you're done with most of it. So, dude, my hat's off to you.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I having had another friend that went through all of that stuff, including the paramedic, and then having to do it, I know what not personally, but I mean, I've heard it's a real slog.
It can be. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of trial and tribulation. It's been a blast. It's hard to go to school and work full time in both ways. So, but it's been really rewarding. I got to be honest, but it's really interesting because when you asked me about this to come on to the show today, you know, when I was doing school, and part of the reason why I started it was because like I always wanted to feel more medically inclined. And so as I'm going through school, I'm thinking like through it, right? What can I do? How does this affect me? How would I be able to treat this or whatever in a long-term scenario? And like, things don't look good.
No, I think, and it's funny, and I get, like, you and I were talking about this a second ago, like, I'll get the random, like, what about diabetics? And I'm always like, I'm sorry, you're going to die. Because it's just, most of it. I don't mean to laugh at, like, more right, but it's, you know, and I think that's the gallows humor of dealing with all of this that comes from so long where you're just like, nah, you're going to die. And so many different things are just like, no, cut it out. You just, no. When you spend enough time dealing with this stuff, you start to come to the realization that there are a lot of things that it's just like, no, sorry. And medical stuff, like there's a lot you can do from what I understand, but there's like, you very quickly pass a point where it's just like, no, I'm sorry, unless you have a doctor. And as we were talking about, and in some cases, unless you have this one specific kind of doctor, because not all doctors are the same.
They're not all created equal.
And they have their specialties, and those specialties are there for a reason. So, but we are going to get into some basic stuff, and get into it in here in a second. So that hopefully people have at least a fundamental sense of what they should have. And as a quick side note, it was funny. The friend that went through, the stuff that used to do the EMS newbie podcast. And that was one of the things that he came to, but he got into it originally because I was like, well, you were a computer developer, like you were a software developer. Why did you get in? He's like, because I read 1 second after and I realized I have zero skills in the apocalypse. And I was like, so you went all the way through paramedic school because you were like, he's like, yep. And I was like, okay.
Hey, more power to him, man. It's commitment right there.
Yeah. That's dedication to the cause. So let's get in here. Was it harder or easier than you expected it to be?
Honestly, it was easier.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was for me. I mean, my dad was a paramedic. My mom was an EMT for a while. And so I basically did nothing fun as a kid because they were always worried.
Like the stethoscope kid.
My dad was a contractor for oil and natural gas after that. And so like we hardly had insurance for a little while growing up. So my mom was like, no, you can't do karate. Mom, like, no, you can't do this. It's like, and then like he pulls out the photo albums of like all the bad scenes that they've made. And it's like, this is why you shouldn't do this. And it's like, this is why you can't drink. And I'm like, okay, thank you, Dad. And so then, you know, sneak out and do my own thing later on my own. But no, I mean, so, you know, the fundamentals are there. I mean, basically just the basic fundamentals, like, so there's different levels of emergency care in the field, right? So the EMS system as we know it today. So, but, you know, if you can treat the main life threats and then get them to a higher level of care, that's literally all that our modern medicine system has been created to do. So this whole idea of like the doctor coming to your your house and treating, your cut leg with his leather doctor bag.
Mhm.
That doesn't exist anymore. Right. And so, our idea is like, we're really blessed to be here in Houston area because we've got massive amounts of medical stuff all around us.
Yeah.
We're really super lucky for that. And, but like you said, everything is a specialized system. So even the ER docs, like you get in there to a level 1 trauma center and, their specialty is to stabilize you. And then if it's something else, neuro, ENT, orthopedic, like that gets sent out.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, it's a great to have that, but in a grid down scenario or some sort of shit hits the fan thing, that's not necessarily going to be there. So for, was it easier or harder? I think it was easier for me at first. Once you get the basic stuff down, if you can just remember from a basic standpoint going through the school, you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you've got to, of course, understand the knowledge that they're putting in front of you, and you've got to eat that up. So it was a lot of time on my own to really kind of exercise that. But once I understood exactly how they were asking things, it was a piece of cake.
Okay. Was it more fun than you thought it was going to be?
It was more fun. The class was fun. We had a small group. And so it was a lot of fun working with those guys. We actually created an online chat group. So we would work on problems that we had with each other ahead of time. And honestly, that's probably what made it easier. So, but it was a really good time. And, I'm still friends with those people. So some of them I still work with, and we see each other all the time. And yeah, it's been fun.
Dude, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that, because I remember when you first telling me about that, and I was like, sure, I knew it was tough. So I was like, I'm sure he ends up having fun with it. Because I know people I have old friends who went through medical school and then immediately afterwards, like, I'm done, I'm out, forget it.
Yeah.
I hate it. And it's just like, wow, okay. I mean, I did the same thing with a different career path, and I think to sort of set the tone, just so that we don't have to keep saying it, everything that we're going to say medically is going to be geared for the average person who's not going to go off and go to paramedic school so that in 1 second after they can get into the clubhouse or whatever, or anything like that. But just like, basically, like, you're willing to go put in a little time, maybe take in a few classes, spend some money, have some things, practice it. And so I think preface it from that standpoint. Where does somebody even begin and I guess we can frame it as somebody to be the family medic?
Sure. Well, I mean, so I didn't even get into emergency medicine because of the fact I wanted to be in emergency medicine. I thought it was always interesting. Like I had mentioned my parents and whatnot before me, but, they always said it was a great idea. I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, But when I got into my career field on the private side of security, there was way more options for me there if I was a medic. So that's where I started. So, of course, first aid, CPR, starting that, and then EMT basic on through the paramedic and so on and so forth as I go. But for the average person, your basic CPR first aid course, that's minimum, hands down minimum. The first aid's going to teach you how to, treat basic cuts and scrapes and wounds and things like that. I understand that the CERT program does have some small medical courses as well. But the cool thing, and we were talking about this with the app, inadvertently, where my class was talking to each other, but there is so much information out there nowadays on the internet. Don't believe everything you hear on the internet. But there's so much more information with that. And then medical textbooks and first aid textbooks and things like that. Those are really good places to find more information out. So you don't know what you don't know, right? So medicine's like a rabbit hole, just like this show. And you can continually go down and down and down and down as far as you want to go with it. I mean, there's still fields of medicine that are being researched and discovered today, But I think starting with just a basic first aid course, obviously, is where you should start. I think emergency medical technician is probably a good place to go, because as you get your certification, I also think that if you can volunteer with a local fire department or something like that as a basic for a little while, because it's going to give you other thing that you read in the book, you're going to see it in the field. And not only that, but it's going to open your horizon to a lot more stuff. But like I said, if you can treat those basic things, and also being a basic, if you pay attention, you're going to learn a lot. That was really an eye opener for me.
So how long and how difficult is the EMT? Not the paramedic, but the EMT.
The EMT side of it. So there used to be lots of different certifications for EMT. There was like all these different things. So now they have, I think, what's called an ECA, or emergency medical responder, which is like the very basic entry level, sort of like your first aid CPR, but a little bit more than that. And then there's EMT, which used to be EMT basic, and they just cut the basic off, and it's just emergency medical technician.
Okay.
And then there's advanced, and then paramedic. And so the EMT class is about 4 months usually, if you want to take it at a standalone place, because there's a lot of businesses that just offer the course and you can go take it. But community colleges also offer it too. Maybe even your local Y might offer it as well as a class. But you can take it at your local community college. You can take it at standalone businesses, or, maybe, like I said, maybe possibly your local Y, maybe even your local fire department might even put one on. I know that the place that I learned it originally was a business, but they operated out of a fire department. Okay. So it was pretty cool. And so we got a lot of experience there, which was really helpful.
So for the EMT, what was the one you said that was just in between first aid and EMT?
The emergency medical responder, I think is what it's called nowadays.
Okay.
It might be ECA. I can't really remember, but it's one of those two.
Okay. So is that also put on by basically the same people who do the EMT?
So there's the National Registry of Emergency Medical Technicians, and that's up in one of the Midwestern states is where they're headquartered. Okay. And so they put out the standards for that. And then those courses are run and licensed through that place. And so then individual places teach that. And then they are the ones that license it.
So it's like first aid plus, or?
Yeah, it's first aid plus. I mean, it's meant for those people that are going to show up there immediately to an incident. So a lot of places like chemical plants or maybe shopping malls or places like that are going to have these people on staff because they're going to be the regular employees that don't need a lot of medical training.
They just need to be able to stabilize somebody long enough. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to be there. They're going to be able to help stop the hemorrhage. They're going to be able to do CPR effectively. They're going to be able to sit there and maybe breathe for the person, something like that.
Okay. So that's interesting. And so it's just a little bit more than like your standard American Red Cross first aid and CPR course.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Sort of like how those courses used to be, which they used to be a lot more. When I had to take them oh God, how long has it been? So it was the first one I ever took. First one I ever took was almost 30 years ago. And it's funny because there was what they taught in those Red Cross first aid classes back then, because I had to get it for like lifeguarding or something like that. But but it was like, there was way more stuff in it then than there is now. Now I'm like, where's the tracheotomy? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, man, the first one I took, we took a pen apart and we're like, yeah, you jab it in your throat. And they're like, no.
Don't ever do that.
Stop and call 911 and then chest compressions and then maybe give them a little mouth to mouth. Like,
what is the shit hits the fan? Literally,
they had like emergency tracheotomies in the very first one I ever took, which I guess that was in the mid 90s.
Okay. No, that's what MacGyver did after he retired from the show. Is that?
I guess so. No. He went and flew around the galaxy.
That's it. That's right.
Stargate.
Oh man, that's one of my favorite shows, man.
I wish they'd bring it back.
Talk about a rabbit hole. There's a wormhole for you.
Exactly. Wormhole Extreme.
Wormhole Extreme.
What to get us back on track before we go off? So what is a reasonable level of competency where someone is actually useful in a medical emergency? Like we're not talking like somebody lost, I guess it could be lost an arm or something, but I don't know, bullet holes, whatever. What's a reasonable level of competency for the average person who has a day job? Well, you know what? I've already said we wouldn't have to keep saying that. So
yeah, well, I mean, man, that's a hard one to answer because the thing that I've learned the most about being in EMS is that it goes from having a splinter to cardiac arrest. Or traumatic arrest, which is really bad. So it just depends on the scenario. I would ask the person that's listening to this and really interested in it is like, get into it if you want, and then go as far as you're willing to go. And that would be my advice. Go as far as you want to go, because you can go all the way. I mean, you can go get your doctorate. You can go get, you can keep going. That's true. Right. Yeah. So, and I'm sure there's people that have thought about it and have done it just for the sake of, being prepared. But I mean, I'm not one of those. I'm probably not going to go spend 8 years in med school and residency and all that other fun stuff. But I feel fairly competent, but I'm not 100% confident. I can't do surgeries. I can't do things like that, So I would defer to somebody else on that. I mean, I could do minor things, suturing and whatnot, but if somebody needs to have their appendix taken out, I can diagnose that for you and tell you that's probably what it is. but I'm also going to sit there and you're going to go, ow, hey, it stopped hurting. And I'm going to go, oh crap, that's bad.
Yeah.
So I would think that get your EMT if you can, because that's the basic level. That's just the basic level. And the best thing about being an EMT is you're going to be able to recognize what's bad. Like you're going to be able to understand, and you're going to be able to see a person. You're going to be able to physically assess them and look at their signs and symptoms. And you're going to say, hey, look, this person needs more attention than I can give them. Let's start looking for something better.
Okay.
So, and then other than that, in sort of an SHTF scenario, I mean, we had Harvey down here recently. There were people that didn't have access to medical stuff for a week and a half. Right. And so if there was an emergency, they could probably have gotten to someone or had somebody come to them. But, minor things like that. Yeah. I mean, you're probably going to be okay with just having a basic there to treat the minor injuries and minor illnesses. But the other thing you also have to think about in a situation like this, and this is the one that I tell people a lot about, because we talked about a little bit how our medical system is set up, right? It's for this continuing care process and whatnot. And we'll try, they try to heal as much as they can, but a lot of times they can't. Things like diabetes, ongoing conditions, heart problems, hypertension, high blood pressure, these kind of things. These are problems that affect a vast majority of Americans. And so those people are going to need ongoing care. They're going to need ongoing medications. They're going to need things like that. And so when you think about a really long-term scenario, that's the stuff that I cringe at.
Right.
Because there's going to be people that aren't going to be able to get those medications. And there were people in Harvey that I know lost their medications. So I worked with an aid group. We went to Iraq and we saw a lot of interesting illnesses that happened to the areas that we were in weren't first world. They weren't third world. They were sort of in the middle there. They were third to second world, sort of in that ballpark. So, I mean, they had fairly decent health and hygiene. The water was clean for the most part in most of the places, but they had a lot of respiratory issues, lots of fever, influenza, things like that spread really quickly throughout these populations because of sanitation issues. And so sanitation is going to be the biggest key thing for people in that sort of scenario. We take for granted our running water. We take for granted having clean showers and clean toilets and things like that. So one of the things that we focused on while we were there, we actually built toilets for a couple of compounds. We got them hot running water. We got them ability to clean themselves on a daily basis in the right way, gave them shoes, things like that you wouldn't think about that we just take for granted here. But in a war zone, for these people that literally had to pull up their house in the middle of the night and leave. That was a problem for a lot of folks. So interesting one I remember was a family that had to leave in the middle of the night because ISIS was literally driving down their street.
Oh, wow.
They grabbed the kids, they threw them in the car, they drove. They didn't have money, they didn't have anything. They got to where we were, and they had set up and they were in this camp. And the kid, the working age son, he was probably 16 or 17. He had left and he didn't have his eyeglasses. And he had really bad vision deficit. So, which was normal for him, but he needed eyeglasses. So he couldn't work. He couldn't do anything without some sort of visual acuity. So we actually paid and we took him to the local eye doctor, and they made him glasses right there on the spot and gave it to him. And then he was able to be effective in the work environment. But those are things that people don't necessarily consider when it comes to these kind of things. Do you have your regular medications? Do you have your eyeglasses? Do you have a spare pair of eyeglasses? Things like that. I wear contacts and glasses, and I have plenty of everything just in case. So I sort of went down my rabbit hole there of like, what should you be prepared for? Well,
and I think that does bring up a good point, which is just for some basics, like let's say somebody does the EMT or they do, I've forgotten it for the second time, the program between first aid and
the ECA EMR. Emergency medical responder, emergency care attendant. Oh, that's what it is. Emergency care attendant, emergency medical responder. I think they might have merged the two. It's one or the other.
Can we just call them ECA for the rest of it?
Yeah, we'll just do ECA.
Hopefully I remember that the third time I have to say it. So somebody in there between first aid, CPR, ECA, and EMT, what are some realistic injuries that people should be prepared to be able to treat. Because like you were saying, you've just been overseas, or not just, but you've been overseas a bunch of times. You've seen some stuff and things. What are some of the most common things that people should be prepared when there isn't somebody like you to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I need a woo-woo to take me to the hospital?
Yeah. Well, woo-woo describes some of us pretty well.
I meant the car, not so much the people in the car, but yeah.
Either way.
Really. I've met a few of you. Yes.
We're just like those crazy prepper people. We come in all shades, shapes, and sizes.
Yes.
So, honestly, injuries, yes. Illness is more. That's my opinion. So illness is more. So like I was talking about with health and hygiene.
Okay.
So health and hygiene are going to be key. I mean, I see it every day where I'm working, people with some sort of issues as far as my niece. Okay. So she got sick twice recently and she's not around any other kids ever, but she both got a respiratory infection, presumably from other kids. How? I don't know, because she's hardly ever around them. She'd get it off the shopping cart or whatever, but she's 4 or 5 and she's a very healthy kid. So, but had she, and then it progressed pretty rapidly, and her dad is a nurse who's pretty seasoned. And so he recognized some complications and I recognized the complications, and we had a conversation and we took her to the hospital. So, I mean, and that was in a normal everyday scenario, right? So, but what would happen if that was some sort of grid down scenario or during like a hurricane or a traumatic event? So for me, illnesses and prevention is the huge one for me.
Okay.
Antibiotics are going to be, or antibiotics anyway, in general, aren't, I mean, there's this whole push out there to use them if you need them, but don't use them if you don't have to.
Right.
Right. So because of that, they're even less prevalent than they used to be. And so, antibiotics are gold, but not all antibiotics work for everything, right? They have different uses. And so I'm not going to get into all that.
Yeah. Antibiotics becomes a complicated conversation.
It can. And then, there's other things as to whether antibiotics meant for other creatures are good enough for human use and things like that.
That's a whole separate show that I'm still trying to figure out how to do justice to. But I
mean, there's some merit there and there isn't as well. Like, I mean, I feel like it's sort of a gray area, but I know plenty of people that have done it and it's fine for them. And that's great. And so, I mean, I personally, when I've traveled overseas and I wasn't sure what I was going to get on the other end of that, I talked to my physician ahead of time and I said, hey, look, this is the area I'm going to. The first thing he was like was prevention. Do you have all your shots? And I said, okay, that's good. This is the areas I'm going to. These are the shots I need. So they hooked me up with the shots I needed. And then also for any medications, I said, okay, look, these are the things that I'm probably going to face over here. What do I need? And so he actually wrote me prescriptions for the things that I might need while I was there. And I took those with me. Okay. And so, but, so talk to your physician if you're worried about certain things, and maybe they can get, especially like your regular meds that you're going to take anyway, talk to him and say, hey, look, we're coming into hurricane season, whatever. Can you write me an extra prescription for this and get it? Now, if it's a regular dosage type deal, your insurance may not pay for it. So you might have to look at alternative options, or you might even have to look at paying for that out of pocket. But once you pay for it one time, right, and you use that, and your insurance kicks in the next time, and so then you've got a month surplus every month. And I mean, a month, 30 days, it's going to get you through pretty much everything over here. But so as far as illnesses go, as far as things go and injuries to prevent, like I said, sanitation is a big one. Illness prevention is the big one if you can do it, because we're not going to have the modern amenities like we normally do.
Right. Without power and without communication.
Running water. How about toilet facilities? Does everybody have something they can do to get rid of waste? Yeah. Because that's huge. I mean, there's people nowadays in the US that don't have the proper ability to get rid of their waste, or they choose not to. That's always fun stories of
EMS. I've heard some rather disturbing and disgusting stories via Yeah.
So that's always fun. But okay, as far as injuries go, minor sprains, strains, things like that, you're going to have lacerations, cuts, stuff like that. Think about what you do on a normal basis. Okay. Now think about if you had to live with, or have you ever been, I mean, I know you're pretty outdoorsy. You've gone camping and stuff like that, right? So like, I mean, what do you normally do when you go camping as far as keeping your hands clean, using the restroom, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, you end up using, well, I actually take a few water jugs with me, but that's because I've learned over the years that, I've got my cooking water and then I have my water for cleaning hands and stuff like that. But I also have a wife who is like
all about hygiene, right?
Yeah, all about hygiene.
Which is great.
Yeah.
But you carried that water?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we were always car camping. But like, yeah, if you're doing something else, then
well, I mean, if you don't have running water in your house, where are you gonna get your water from?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You're gonna go down to the local bayou or creek or whatever and try to pull your water out, or hopefully maybe you've got a solar powered water pump if you're thinking ahead, and they'll pump the water for you. But you're gonna be hauling heavy things, right? You're going to be doing things outside, presumably, because who's going to be inside when it's 100 degrees outside, or maybe you're stuck inside, right? And because it's winter and there's a blizzard going on and you have no power, so you're going to be doing things in the house, and you're going to be basically, the point is that like when your normal day gets interrupted, you're going to be doing things that you're not used to doing, right? You're going to be cleaning, you're going to be cutting wood, you're going to be doing all sorts of the daily chores that we used to not have to do, right? So you're going to have a lot of injuries from things like that, people cutting themselves, all sorts of fun stuff. I think that, you're probably going to have some major traumatic injuries in a general populace. People that aren't used to using chainsaws or whatever are going to be trying to do that, an axe to cut firewood or whatnot. And you're going to have those major traumas. And if it really is a long-term bad scenario, or you're somewhere, hell, even in modern America, you could be out in a rural Midwestern state or even West Texas, and you might be hours from higher level medical care, even with air transport. So, good luck. Really. So you're going to find those kind of minor things as well. But I think one of the things that you're going to see a lot of too, especially in like our stagnant populace as we have today, you're going to have a lot of musculoskeletal problems, like people with like old injuries acting up, or new injuries, or they might be getting like tendonitis or pulled muscle, or like, I pinched a nerve in my neck a while back, and a lot of people don't think about this. Do you have a chiropractor that works in your area that you have access to that might be a friend or something? Like, my chiropractor, we got a pretty good relationship. I don't know where he lives. If I pinch my nerve again, good luck. Yeah. Like, I probably need to put that on my list now that I think about it.
So I need to find out where that guy lives.
Anyway, yeah, dadgum. But no, so those are things that you're probably going to have problems with, just as a basic level, right? But those type of problems, and that's why I preach a lot about prevention and being careful. I have leather gloves in all of my gear. I have eyeglasses. I have regular nitrile gloves that I use. This is sort of like our exam gloves or whatnot, or the rubber gloves that you use for washing dishes. You can use those too for anything that's going to get dirty, because I don't want to get my hands dirty at all. Yeah,
I think Ron had a great expression that he pulled out of paramedic school, which was, if it's wet and sticky, not yours, don't touch it.
Yeah, big time, absolutely. Keep your mouth shut when you're doing things as well.
That's a good one.
That's a hard lesson to learn.
I don't even want to know.
It wasn't me, but I had to watch what happened to that poor soul, and it was a bad day for him. So exposure controls are not fun. I'll put it that way. But anyway, so it's so prevention, minor sprains and strains, things like that, cuts, avulsions, bruises, some traumatic injuries as well. You're going to have also, you might have run-ins with wildlife, right? So things like bees and wasps, stuff like that. Be careful for snakes. You're screwed if you get bitten and grid down like that, or even spiders for that matter. Down here, we've got some nasty spiders. Also you want to be aware of, other creatures like porcupines or things like that, because those are just never fun. Plus antibiotics for that kind of stuff might be hard to find. Yeah. So anyway, it's just, for me, it's all about prevention. If I can prevent having it. So, I'm pretty active. I come from a working family. We've done a lot of stuff, on the ranch and things like that. So I'm pretty used to working with my hands. But as I've changed careers throughout the years, I'll go back and try to do something. And I realize, hey, I'm not as proficient at it as I used to be. Right. I was working with the strap last week, and I ended up cutting my thumb open pretty good. So I was like, well, shit, that would be really, really bad, considering I was also camping that weekend and I didn't have running water. So I couldn't go immediately just rinse it out with some like 20 minutes of clean water or whatever like they recommend, right? So I had to figure out exactly how to do that, and got some good clean water and cleaned it out really well, and now it looks pretty good. But
yeah,
anyway, so but I was kind of worried there for a few days, making sure it didn't turn red on me.
Yeah, because stuff like that gets infected pretty easily, and trying to make sure that there's no debris or anything in it.
Yeah, so it depends on the clean cut. Like, so that was a pretty clean cut on some metal that was pretty clean. It wasn't rusty or anything like that, so I didn't have to worry.
Well, see, there's another one, tetanus shots.
Tetanus shots. Well, yeah. I mean, and so tetanus comes with a few other things in it usually, and a lot of those are sort of like influenza level type stuff, so they can spread through populations with dysentery pretty easily. Upper respiratory problems that'll close off your trachea, you stop breathing. I mean, like there's some nasty stuff out there that can spread through a community pretty fast if you're not being careful. So like I call it like my family, my little tiny family. I try to keep my little tiny family together, and other tiny families we can interact with, but we stay an arm's length apart from each other, because if it came down to it, I don't want what you have. Like, not that I don't love you, not that you're not my neighbor, not that I'm willing to not help you, but we ain't gonna be sharing water. We're not gonna be sharing food. I'm not gonna be kissing you. I'm not gonna be hugging you, because I mean, it comes down to some serious things. Yeah, I mean, mine comes first. Period. Right.
As it needs to be. There's no reason to jeopardize your own family and stuff.
Right.
Here's a more serious question, and I'm sure everybody was like, when are they going to get to this one? We all spend a lot. We're all preppers. And we all worry about some things happen. Plus, there's people are at the range, which I think is much more likely a place that something like this could happen, or just an accidental discharge. So dealing with bullet wounds.
Okay.
How serious is that, and what's the reasonable level of competency somebody actually needs to be able to deal with that? And I get that this is a very nuanced question, or the answer should be. So I'll let you take it from there.
Man, there's so many places to go with this. Basically, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Long story short, if you're in some place that doesn't have higher level medical care, and when I mean like higher level, I mean like an actual like trauma hospital with surgeons, and specialized surgeons at that, depending on where you were shot or where they were shot. You're pretty much done. So now that being said, if you got grazed by something, right, and it kind of took a chunk out of something, and it doesn't look that bad, sure, clean it up. Try to sterilize it as best you can. I mean, the bullet's hot. It's probably not got a bunch of crap on it unless it's shot through toilet paper or whatnot. I mean, I don't know. I don't know your life, but I mean, so do that and, clean it, and it'll probably be all right. If it was just quote unquote a flesh wound, you might be able to be okay with just sterilizing it, sewing it off if it didn't hit any major vessels or anything like that. But if it hit bone, it could be bleeding inside, right? If it hit an internal organ, it's bleeding. It could have destroyed an organ, right? If it hit anything to do with your cardiopulmonary, if it had anything to do with your lungs, your heart, and all of that, like, dude, you're done. So like, I mean, do I have needle decompression stuff for like lung injuries in my kit? Yeah, I do, because I'm trained to do that. But also, am I definitive care? Meaning like, am I the best place for this person to be to take care of this in the modern age? No, I'm definitely not that person. So, I mean, my level of care that I can provide as a paramedic is like it's still pretty good, right, in the history of things. But for a regular bullet wound in the Civil War, could I take care of that, or could that surgeon that's been on the field at Gettysburg for a longer, could that guy back in the 17? I mean, could that guy back then, could he do that better than I can? Maybe. Maybe
he could saw off a leg like nobody's business.
I mean, like, because they have those back in those days, they had those abilities to take care of those things up to their skill levels, right? And the knowledge that they had. Could I probably give those guys some tips on what to do? Sure. But I mean, do I know the first thing about sawing off a bone? I mean, it looks pretty straightforward, but I'm not sure once you get down in there.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just sort of it. So I mean, I definitely think that if you're going to be shooting on the range, you should have a pretty good first aid kit that's stocked out. I mean, chest seals, tourniquets, compression bandages, gauze, quick clot or C-locks. And so, I mean, those kind of things.
So so that's an interesting thing. What getting into chest seals and that level of medicine and being able to actually use a kit, because as we've talked about, we were joking out a little bit about having all the stuff is nonsense if you don't know how to use it. And then hoping somebody else has the experience and, oh, good, you brought all your supplies with you.
Right.
It's like, yeah, okay, great. You're not in an Army platoon. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got a field surgeon's hospital kit, that's awesome. You've never taken a CPR class. Like, I mean, yeah, I've got those people. I was telling you, I had a friend that was asking me to show him lockpicking. He brought like this $800 lockpicking kit. And I was like, dude, do you even know how to use all this stuff? And he's like, opening it up. I was like, dude, I don't even know how to use all this stuff in here.
Yeah.
I'm going to use like 3 things in this deal and I can get you into like 95% of the places you need to be. But it's the same thing with medicine. Like it's like we were talking about, it's very nuanced. It gets down into the weeds really easily, really quickly. I mean, basic anatomy, okay, everybody can kind of understand that. But once you start getting into multiple systems and things that get super complicated together, that's a whole nother level of medicine. And not even, I mean, we're just not even scratching the surface because you can't do that. Right. So so surgeons and things like that, that's a whole nother level.
So with the ECA, is that enough of a level of training to be able to use those tools effectively? Should you have some issue like that on a shooting range or wherever?
Yeah, probably for the basic stuff. I mean, like, if you have the ability to take like a tactical medicine course or something like that, that's not actually a certification other than like in the military or someplace like that. But yeah, I mean, that'll give you some good information on that. If you really want to do some pretty good, life support stuff, basic EMT, just your regular EMT would really be where it's at. Because not only that, but you're going to be able to realize like, okay, this is more serious than it looks or whatnot. Because you learn a lot about anatomy and physiology and stuff like that in the EMT stuff. So, I mean, paramedic goes into it to an advanced degree, but only on certain systems. But it really relies a lot on your basic knowledge from an EMT.
Oh, okay. That's interesting to know. What does a basic EDC kit, if you were to help somebody fill out the EDC portion of their, if you were to help somebody fill out the medical part of their EDC kit, obviously they're not going to walk around with a giant backpack, but just a simple EDC kit, what should that basic kit contain?
Well, I guess I would have to ask the person, what are they wanting to expect? Right. So what are they expecting?
Okay.
So, I mean, if you're at home, right, and you just want to have like a little kit for your house.
Right. Well, I mean, separate out the home kit. I'm just talking about like
carry on your person every day. So I carry a tourniquet every day, everywhere I go. Doesn't matter what. Why? Is the odds that I'm going to run into that kind of problem every day? No, but it's one of the easiest things for me to treat as far as massive bleeding and hemorrhage from an extremity. Right. I actually had a friend recently who has taken a CERT class and actually works with his local CERT, and he carries a small tourniquet with him, the same one I carry with me every day. And he was walking down the street of his city up in the Northeast, and a guy came around the corner and he had been shot.
Oh, wow.
And he actually put a knee on him to help stop the bleeding as best he could. He pulled out his tourniquet, he slapped it on him, and he saved the guy's life because it was an arterial bleed.
That's really, well, not cool that the guy got shot, but really cool that your friend was able to help him. That's really neat.
It was really cool. He was honored by the city and got a whole bunch of stuff. But anyway, it was really cool. He posted a photo of his pants and he was wearing khakis that day, and it's literally covered in this other guy's blood. So think about that. If you're scared of nasty stuff in blood, which there's a lot of it.
We tend to be full of those things when you open us up.
Yeah, it's true. Anyway, so I always carry a tourniquet with me. If I can, I'll carry a chest seal or quick clot as well, or something along those lines. And that's like my basic little tiny basic kit. If I can, I carry trauma shears with me every day. I normally carry a knife that has a rescue hook on it. You know, I can like pull off, I can cut through clothing and things like that without hurting anybody. And so those are my basic 3 or 4 things that I carry with me every day, pretty much, or within arm's reach of myself everywhere I go. Now, of course, when I'm working, I have a whole range of things.
Right. You've got a truck full of junk.
Which builds from that. But in my personal car, I also have another kit, right? So that kit I use as my EDC kit on the truck. So if I was to use something, or not on the truck, but in my personal vehicle, but if I was to use something off my person one day, I could go to my truck and I could restock out of that bag if I needed to, right? Okay, so we've talked about building before. I know we've talked about building things in systems and tiers. And so, so in the truck, I have all of my normal massive hemorrhage stuff because that's stuff that I can actually effectively help manage in the field. I also have airway kit. So I have a, the mouth to mask breather, right? So I can do CPR.
So you're not having to like make out with people.
Yeah, that's really a bad idea. Don't do that in the field. Please don't do that. If you know them and you think we're cool, then cool. But you can even carry those little plastic face shields on a key ring.
Yeah, that's what I have in a couple of my stuff. Yeah,
they work pretty well.
Yeah.
To help reduce transmission. So there's that. I also do a little bit of hiking and camping and stuff like that. So that bag isn't specifically for that, but it can build out a little bit for that. So I have things like SAM splints, multiple splints in there. I have saline. I have Band-Aids and Neosporin and that kind of stuff to help do that. I also have a small suture kit in there that I can help do stuff. Now that's not inside my practice as a paramedic to do suturing. And I wouldn't do that on anybody in my normal job, but that's something I feel confident that I could do on a willing participant outside of my work environment. Right. Also, if people are looking into suturing, stapling is really easy too. So look into stapling if you guys are interested in that. That's pretty cool. But don't try to remove them unless you have the staple remover.
Oh, yeah.
There was a drunk campfire night where things got real fun.
All right.
And really, really painful at the same time.
Paramedics gone wild.
Oh, man.
So, so what about a home kit?
Home kit. Okay. So like at home, those little Johnson & Johnson kits or whatnot, you see at like the Walmart or wherever, right? Okay. Those are good for like your normal cuts and things like that. And they'll normally have a little bit of medicine in there, Tylenol, ibuprofen, that kind of thing. Those are great for your normal, like, ow, I cut myself. I fell and scraped my knee. Boo-boo, ow.
Yeah.
So those are like your little boo-boo kits, right? For me, I have a home kit that's a little bit more expanded than that, obviously. I have a lot more stuff in there that I can use, but I'm not really going to do that unless it's something massive hemorrhage, right? So, or something that is medical that I can help with. So I do have things like, a thermometer. I can tell if somebody's running a fever. I've got a sphygmometer. I've got stethoscope. I can take a blood pressure. I can find out if somebody's got a heart issue, or not a heart issue, but I can figure out if somebody's got high blood pressure, things like that. And that I even keep some of that stuff in my truck sometimes too, depending on what I'm doing. But your home kit is going to be based off your capability, right? So if somebody is a surgeon and they want to have a surgical kit at their house and they feel confident being able to do surgery in their dining room, more power to them. So I've got the stuff that I'm feel pretty confident with doing. Also lots of medicines, over-the-counter meds. Keep a lot of over-the-counter meds, antacids, antidiarrheals, things like that, all at home. Because those are things that you can always use in the regular life, right? And then if you do have a problem in some sort of grid down scenario, you can't get to the store and you develop problems because you're not used to eating certain foods, or you ate something that was bad and wasn't supposed to be eaten. Those things can help you. So I have a lot of stuff like that. I also keep most of my prescriptions. And if I don't use them after like a medical procedure or whatnot, I will still keep those things around for a while. Obviously, I'm not one of those people that believe that like they'll last indefinitely, because I have taken meds that were close to 10 years old and they actually made me sick that were prescription. They were just antibiotics, but that was my personal experience, right? I feel like it made me worse. But they were a solid pill, but so I think they do have a shelf life. I think it's longer than what's printed on the bottle.
Right.
But of course, this is all anecdotal. Don't take this as medical advice, please. Plus, also, I want to say, as a paramedic, I don't have a medical license, right? I'm licensed to work as a paramedic, but that is underneath the license of other doctors. And of course, I'm just here as somebody with medical experience, not as somebody that is licensed to practice medicine, or that somebody that's giving you professional medical advice. So
yes.
Just keeping that all in mind there. I know there's a legal disclaimer, but this is my personal disclaimer. Don't come after me if you do something stupid.
Well, dude, I really appreciate it. I think that should give people a lot of food for thought, and hopefully convince some people to go out and get some more training. Yeah, which I myself need to do too. Okay, cool. So anyway.
Dude, help. I will help you.
Oh, awesome.
Let's go.
Bye, man. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, man. Take it easy. Bye, guys.
Show notes and other tasty resources can be found by going to intherabbithole.com/E276. If you're watching this on YouTube, do all that YouTube stuff. Like this video, subscribe, and slap that bell around, because bananas are yellow. With that, we wrap up episode number 276 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.